Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show kicking off season 26-27. My name is Cameron Bell. I am your host as always, and joining me in the first ever extra of this season is a vintage performer on Heart and Hand. You'll recognise his voice and his name straight away, and that is the stalwart Alan Bradley. Alan, thank you so much for coming on and kicking us off properly.
Yeah, thanks. It's really good to be on. I'm just thinking, Cammy, it's pretty much 60 years now since I've been following this daft side of ours. So still here, mate, and we'll get into things anyway. But as ever, after a wee break, I'm really looking forward to getting back in and hopefully some shiny things for the Gers.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we've had our fill of the World Cup. It was great to watch for a wee while, and then you get the itch. And it's the cyclical life of a football fan, Alan, especially if you've not had a great end to your previous season. You can't wait to see the back of it. You have this period across the summer where you're like, you know what's going to happen, and they kind of build up to it, and then we get to it, and then it comes around very quickly, and it kicks off tomorrow night at Tannadice as Rangers begin our season in what is definitely a new look Rangers team and bench. We'll discuss the changes, the incomings, the outgoings, everything that's kind of happened across the course of really the last couple of months. When I think back to, Derek McInnes coming in, Lawrence Shankland, etc., even to this week with the last couple of days discussions around some more players coming in and more players going out. But Alan, give me a little bit of how you're feeling now. The dust somewhat is beginning to settle in terms of getting us ready for our domestic campaign kickoff. Are you feeling positive? Are you intrigued? Are you cautious? Where are you at?
I think I'm all of the above, answer E, all of the above. I think totally scunnered the way it all finished. I think we all are, all Rangers fans last year. It was just an absolute sickener. And as you say, the World Cup, yeah, dipped into that. But to be honest with you now, looking forward to it now, I think we've tried the kind of philosopher type, supposedly manager guy, haven't we? We've tried people coming who didn't really know too much about the club, who'd done well elsewhere and so on. An old Rangers da, but I'm actually quite pleased now that with Derek McInnes come in, and by the way, I'll say it now, several years ago I thought we had dodged a bullet, but I think over the past so many years since then, the experience that he's gained elsewhere, he knows a lot about Scottish football, what he did last year with Hearts as well, I think he's improved, kind of leaps and bounds as well. I think his experience as well will be really good. The fact that, as ever, that he played for us, he played under, obviously, Walter as well and so on. So as the old Rangers da, I'm quite keen to getting back to a Rangers team that when we play teams, Cammy, we're not going to be scared, we're not going to get brushed aside, we're not going to be walking off the park, kind of like wee boys. And looking, we'll get into some of the signings and so on and what we've seen. Now, the big caveat is a couple of friendlies, so we really need to check over the next few months. But I've just got a bit of feeling, though, that we're going to be, I think, a bit more solid, a bit more aggressive as well. Probably not as pleasing in the eye, but quite frankly, just win. So, as I say, I'm caught up in that whole going a bit back more to our kind of Scottish roots and so on. I'm also hoping as well that the rest of the supporters as well are kind of going to get behind, clearly give us time and so on. But no, I'm actually looking forward to it. And as I say, the big caveat is we need to wait for several months' time. But what I've seen so far, Cammy, and we'll go through, I'm actually pretty positive about. The biggie obviously will be middle to front, sprinkling the fairy dust and the creativity and so on. But I think if we can get that sorted as well, yeah, I'm up for it, pal. Yep.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points, Alan, and I think, when people were listening to the shows at the end of last season, I think that we hit our post-split fixtures and it just went from catastrophe to catastrophe. We
Yeah.
worked our way out of a title race and there didn't seem to be a reaction. And I think the thing that frustrated a lot of Rangers fans was that I think we fell into a little bit of victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were, we sabotaged ourselves at times. And I think the difficulty that I had with Danny Rule and the players that he had under him at that time was we couldn't arrest the slide. And for Rangers fans, I mean, even if it's a constant, we didn't get beat 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. Like, it wasn't getting worse, but very simply what happened was we had that game at Ibrox against Motherwell. We wanted to be able to try and correct it, and then it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I will kind of temper this with saying I don't ever think that there's going to be a manager of Rangers that everyone will universally agree on. Martin and David spoke really well on Monday's flagship around, and it's very different now. I'm slightly younger than you, but both of us are very aware of this social media sphere that encompasses everything. And so I try and extrapolate a lot of that noise away from it, and you try and look at things pragmatically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you do that probably when you're a wee bit more mature. You've kind of went round the track a few times, and you understand that it is about being able to try and fix some of the glaring gaps. And I think that, as you said there, a Derek McInnes team, I think, will be resilient. I think that they will look to be, as you said, solid. I think that they will be hard to beat. But ultimately, I think what they will do is that they will look to be able to try and earn, a little bit of arrogance and confidence, which has been sorely lacking from this Rangers team. Now, the only two ways you can do that, to my mind, is strong performances and guaranteeing results.
Yes, yeah.
And that's, for me, where Derek McInnes did very well with Hearts. And I agree with what you were saying as well, actually, because I do want to touch on this. I know that the counter argument to Derek McInnes coming in was, well, he knocked us back, blah, 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 what have you. I do get that, but I think he spoke really well about that in his first press conference, where he mentioned that, he had to make an informed and mature decision at that time.
And he didn't feel, I think he
it
didn't feel
right.
ready, whereas now he's built on it, and now it kind of feels as if it's his time, his chance.
Yeah, and I think, of course, we'd love to be sitting here saying that we brought in a league-winning manager and, laden with trophies. Of course we would, right? But there is a market within which we have to shop. And I think that the club have spoken openly about being able to get Scottish identity back into the team. And I think that was their feeling towards approaching Derek McInnes, was that, again, he could bring some of that in from his own experience. And, let's not forget how successful he was as a player. And I think that he was on an upward trajectory from his management career, especially in a season where Hearts were, and I will die on this hill, were cheated out of being able to win the league last season. But all that to one side, that is his previous chapter, and his current chapter is about being able to bring a Rangers team together that is going to be difficult to break down, difficult to beat, dominant, which I think is really, really important, because the key attributes of the team last season were we conceded sloppy goals, we conceded time. So, first halves of games would go by where we rarely threatened and certainly didn't take the lead. Potentially conceded as well. So all of a sudden you're now in an uphill battle. And I think that Derek McInnes, because he's been able to expose that with a Hearts team from last season, he understands where those difficulties are with, the challenges he's had to face coming in the door. And what's been interesting, I think, Alan, with the time that's kind of going on in the summer, and it's a slow burn because, we've played games behind closed doors, and as you rightly said, we've had the friendlies against St Etienne and West Ham. It is about being able to get minutes in the park for some of these players to come in, get used to that kind of atmosphere. And most importantly, and this won't happen by 10 o'clock on Friday night at Dundee, but what these players need to realise, the pressure of playing for Rangers when you come in the door, you are now going to start to see and feel it in the flesh. And Derek McInnes, for me, will be really good at being able to explain, even from his own experience as a player at Ibrox, what the expectations are and what he demands from the team as well. So the more I feel that we are moving towards Friday night, I'll be honest with you, I'm starting to get, the butterflies in the stomach about let's kick the season off, but let's do it really positively. And I think Derek McInnes has been moving in that direction pretty much since he came in the door.
I think so, and I think looking at the signings as well, I just felt that we talked about the mentality, and you saw it the last 5 games or whatever it would be, but you just saw the lack of mentality, the lack of real strength and so on, Cammy. And now when you look at the likes of, the addition obviously of Shanklin, but even, Devlin too, you've got, kind of Dan Neil as well, you've got Dravovic, I can't even pronounce it, Gregorovich, you've got other players now who would seem to be kind of winners, aren't they? They're people that want to be successful. They've been captains, they've been kind of leading teams. Even Ross McCrory, who obviously knows a bit about it. A big Sterling's, if we could just keep on playing all the time. Godfrey too, experience. Fernandes now knows a bit. So I just think the additions that we've got there definitely, I think, will help us. From my point of view too, I know ideally we need to get off with a really good start, and my goodness, I hope that we do, and then we can go from there. But to be perfectly honest with you, and we've seen it, if you do look way back in the past and even way back in my time, if we don't exactly hit it running in the first week or two, as long as you get by, say, week 3, 4 or whatever, as long as you've then got your additions and things beginning to take shape, there is plenty of time. And I think this links to my social media, the stuff you talked about and so on. Even after some of the friendlies, I mean, we're getting people, after friendlies going, this guy looks a dud, what about this and so on. I think people need to get a wee blinking reality check, and we really need to give them, a bit of time. These people are kind of coming in. I'm confident they will, based on the pedigree that we seem to have. And as I say, as long as we can get these last additions. Also, some of the players that are still there, the likes of Chermiti, Nadiri, more experience and so on, being here. Wee Curtis has done well, and I know people are writing him off again, but there's a few people now who've got more kind of experience, Fernandes as well, playing. So I think we're actually in a pretty good shape anyway, Cammy. As I say, I'd love it. We go there on Friday and we win, and then we win the next so many games, do well in Europe and so on. But even at that, if we end up having a bit of a hiccup, for goodness sake, because this is a long-term thing, and ultimately what we're doing is we're kind of really changing and getting back to this whole, I don't know, the kind of spine of the Rangers team, the mentality of the Rangers team and so on. And I think that's where we've got to get to. At the end of the day, I want us to be back to be a Rangers team that people fear, because it was getting to the stage where we're going to, not even away, but even at home, teams were coming going, this is fine, we can pick them off the way they are. We've got to get back now to, my God, Rangers get stuck into us, okay, maybe they're winning ugly and so on, but geez, this is Glasgow Rangers coming, shit, whether we go to away games or go to Ibrox, and we've got to get that fear factor, and from then as well, the momentum will pick up as well, Cammy, and then people will see a proper Rangers team. And I think with his kind of leadership as well, and these new players, no, I definitely think, we're in with a really good chance, but just a wee bit of time and patience, just to see how things, kind of shape up. Yeah.
Yeah, very fair. I'm always cautious about when we make judgment on players. So again, I go back to that idea of there's plenty of people in the social media world who they'll stake their opinion
and they'll never change it.
They'll almost kind of work back from it. And if a player does come and doesn't hit the heights, it's like, well, I said this at the beginning of the season. It's this whole thing of people want to be right first, and I'll never understand it. But the point you made is really good, because it's going to be a different Rangers team in 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Absolutely.
So when we get to the end of August and the window does close, then it will be a different Rangers team. The challenge for the current Rangers team is I would like us to be able to go off to a strong start. I caveat that by saying, listen, let's no burn the house down if we don't win at Tannadice on Friday. Of course, I'll be disappointed. I'm going to.
Yeah.
And so I want to see us start strongly.
But
because
Cammy,
I remember,
Cammy, let's get back to even the soonest time. Dundee United at home, and you struggle a wee bit, even through the kind of Wallace stuff or whatever. You can. As I say, we don't want that. I'd love us to just go right through. But as I say, I think people just need to be I don't know, they need to be a bit more realistic. I've argued with people way back, like you would have done too. Somebody saying to me, Mark Hateley, what did we sign him for? He's a dud. Ray Wilkins, Ian Ferguson, look at him, he's no set. I got him. Look at the up at Tynecastle and then the European one, the Hibs thing. I mean, for goodness sake. And then suddenly you get the McCoist, Ali, you get what I mean? I could go through the lot, and as I say, I don't mean that I'm wanting to give them excuses and so on, but I think Rangers fans need to be realistic, and they do need to really think of, I mean, we're changing things, but okay, once you get to a couple of months' time, fine, but for goodness sake, Cammy, do you know what I mean?
It's the thing that we're always in short supply of, Alan, which is patience.
Yeah.
And it is about being able to be patient with some of these players, being able to try and come in. And what we can't do is transfer our recent travails onto these players who are just in the door, right?
Yes.
And I think we're conscious, but I think everyone's conscious of doing that, right? That's not just a social media thing. I'm conscious of doing it, so I do get it. And sometimes that's why I said to you, it's about probably having to take a breath and take a beat, and then just allowing that team to be able to try and shape up for where it comes into. Because what I thought was really interesting, excuse me, when you looked at the two friendlies against St Etienne and West Ham, was he did want to be able to rotate and he wanted to try some ideas, give those players some of the opportunities. We had practically close to a full house against West Ham, a few thousand shy, but
which is just amazing, though, isn't it?
It was huge, right? But this is also a West Ham team, and again, like you say, the boys covered this on Monday, so for the sake of repetition, I won't go through it word for word. But this is a West Ham team that's worth hundreds of millions in comparison to what we'll spend. But what Rangers, for me, what was an encouraging sign from that, which was a huge problem from last season, as we've kind of touched on, was we didn't appear vulnerable.
No.
And there's too many times where I think beforehand, and you mentioned that in terms of our domestic opponents, they've almost smelt blood. They've smelt a nervousness. And then as a result of that, they've been able to capitalise on it. And again, it was all brought to the fore when we got to the tail end of last season.
Yeah.
And I think, and I do want to talk a little bit around the signings, because you mentioned there about, the spine of the team, which I think is a great point, because obviously we've got Ivor Pandor who's come in now as a replacement for Jack Butland. McCrory, I think, is an interesting signing. Again, I'll be interested to see how much he can play. Personally speaking, I still think right back is an issue, only because I think it's a big ask for McCrory to come in. And the paradox is that I massively trust Dujon Sterling, but I can't trust Dujon Sterling
to play 3 games and 10 days and things like that.
Yeah, you'll get too much inconsistency out of him. Ben Godfrey, I think, acquitted himself pretty well over the course of the last couple of games and what we've seen of him. Dan Neil, I thought, looked quite calm, looked quite composed. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a chance to see Dragicevic. The game was a little bit too early for him, so we'll see if he plays against Dundee United tomorrow night. Shankland, I think, was a huge signing, and obviously on Wednesday, Rangers announced that Lawrence Shankland is going to be the club captain for this season. I don't think that was a huge surprise to anyone, if I'm being honest. But the other thing, just before we come on to the Shankland captaincy, was also Cammy Devlin being able to come in. Devlin, I thought, was a really interesting signing and made complete sense for me. He's one of those players, Alan, and you know what I mean when I say this. You hate seeing him playing against you, but you kind of want him in your team because he's a pest. But what I've enjoyed, especially in the last couple of outings, he has no fear.
No.
And I mean no fear in terms of, it's not a brave thing to go to go smashing into opponents and all the rest of it. That's no bravery. Bravery is being able to make sure that you hold yourself accountable, that you want the ball, that you'll get the ball forward if that's your job. But what I really like about him is that he's holding the players around him to account.
Yeah, he's kind of like and again, obviously not as good in terms of scoring goals. If you think of wee Doddy, wee Alec McDonald, this wee guy who's in the middle there, and it doesn't matter who he's up against, and he's going in and he's winning balls and he's snapping in and he's giving it to other people and moving, and it just seems to kind of, you just seen the way Devlin was doing it. Other thing I liked out of the 2 games, obviously the first one, it was like, oh my goodness, there's a slip balls down our back kind of left side and so on. But second game, obviously the way we've kind of changed things and so on, but far, far tighter. And the number of turnovers that we get, is that what they call them now? But, where we were actually getting in very quickly, a couple of us were getting in, the ball was bubbling about, we were getting away with it. Whereas, see, the likes of last year, the amount of times I was like, could we not win a second ball? Could we not? And it's early on. We need to watch, obviously, we Cammy with the old yellows and reds. But I thought it was great. And again, what it does too is, I think, as you say, it's an example to the other players as well. Come on, get in. The energy goes up. You can feel it in the crowd as well. Do you know, all it takes is a couple. It's a wee bit like, would say, even what was the tackle? Was it Andy played when we beat Celtic at Ibrox first time in Yonks down in front of us in the enclosure, wasn't it? Just one kind of solid tackle getting in.
Yeah, for Halliday.
Halliday it was, wasn't it, down the left-hand side?
Yeah, the 2018 game, yeah.
It wasn't quite Kevin Thompson, but three things like that. But see, having a guy like him, and again, as you say, he's going to be over his own team. And if people are faffing about and all that, you want somebody to do you know what I mean? So I think, but we're not going to be poison to the eye and so on. But I think the other one too is we'll not be as predictable. In the past, we were predictable. Rangers play it this way, they play it this way. Now you've got a mixture where we're playing long balls and so on. We're doing things differently. And I think the good thing about McInnes as well, it'll not be a case of, it's okay, guys, it's 15 minutes to go. Just keep playing that pattern. Something will come out, the percentage. There'll come a time when it'll become Walter, and it'll be, you've got 15 minutes to go. You can try anything, And I'm looking forward to that, because I think that's going to rumble up teams more. I think we were far too easy to play against,
Were you? What was your reaction to the Shankland captaincy decision? You have seen some magnificent Rangers captains in your time. How do you feel Lawrence Shankland will wear the armband?
He's not big Greggy, but but no, Shankland, I think absolutely. I think it makes sense. And I know it's the old, he knows what it's all about, I hope he do. But you've seen, he's got a lot of experience as well. He did really well with Hearts too. I think the guy's got a lot of qualities too. He's had a lot of knocks in his time as well, but he showed some great resilience as well. I think to come back, he's progressed. Scottish international as well. And I must admit, I liked the interview with him as well when he was saying it isn't, obviously things have changed now, in terms of how you get the best out of players. But no, I definitely think he'll be good. And I think it is good, the relationship that he's got with Derek McInnes and obviously with Cammy Devlin as well. I think he'll be fine. Added to that, when you've got the likes of Dan Neil, and there's Dragojevic or whatever, you've got these.
Dragojevic,
okay. But you've got the likes of them, the likes of Ross McCrory and so on. There's a number of strong characters there now. But no, I think Shankland's good. And any time I've heard him, I think he's pretty good media-wise as well. And apparently, by all accounts, in terms of training, he really sets a great example. So, no, good decision.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think, it was probably very, very much odds on that he was going to pick Lawrence Shankland for his captain. He made the decision to keep Shankland as captain, obviously, when he took over at Hearts, which I think was the right thing to do. And I think when you saw that Hearts team and they dug in for each other, they fought for each other, and that's how they were able to maintain such an impressive league run throughout the course of the entire season. There's definitely a cohesion that he was able to facilitate within the group. And McInnes obviously has involvement within that as well. But, we've seen plenty of times from a leadership group at Ibrox where it probably feels that there's... I think it dials back to what we mentioned before, where you are talking about being able to drive standards and being able to try and get reactions from players when you've had a poor result or there's been a poor performance. So you just know that you can do better, which I think is really interesting. Rangers.
I normally like my captains to be central defenders or whatever, but no, I think absolutely fine.
I'm the same, but we take what we can get at the moment, and I think what it does is, whether or not you were talking about, people mentioned about Fernandes, people talked about Godfrey, people talked about Neil, and obviously Dragojevic, as you say, a young player, but he shouldered the responsibility at Partizan, which I think speaks a lot about his character.
Maybe in the future with some of them, depending what happens with Lawrence in the next couple of years as people grow into it. But to be honest with you, let's go back to that Scottish thing, and there is a tick in the box, isn't there? He knows what it's all about. He would die for the Rangers and that, and that's pretty good. You go back to whether it be Greg, even Big Butcher, you guys with golf and things like that. But you actually want a captain with that mentality, and I think Lawrence Shankland will do absolutely fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rangers hopefully looking to complete the signing of Oluthu Makinyanya.
Yes.
I'm absolutely butchering that.
Not
An
as bad as
interesting one.
mine, but on you go.
Yeah, an interesting one, I think, in terms of coming out again, a young player, played across in MLS, really well touted for South Africa. It's again, I think, been able to give him the opportunity to be able to come over and embed himself within the team. And what I think's been interesting, and he did this after St Etienne last week, Alan, where McInnes had made mention that he thought that a couple would be close. Obviously, Dragicevic was one of them. He was announced a couple of days after. And I think Makinya will. I think it's going to be an interesting one for him to be able to come in, adjust to the Scottish game. It's going to be more physical and faster than I think he's used to.
Yeah.
But what it shows, similar to what we're talking about right at the top of the show, this is going to be a Rangers team that's going to have additions being able to come in. And again, we will see players being able to go out. One of whom I do want to get your thoughts on, because it's generated a lot of discussion, and that is Tello Asgard, who, I know I'm saying this and people will be listening, and they'll probably sit in a couple of camps. One of them will be really big disappointment last season, has all the attributes for Scottish football, isn't able to use them to maximum efficiency. And the other camp will be, well, he's done well in the last couple of games. He had a good World Cup when he was involved. Do we give him a second season to be able to try and improve what he was doing on last season as well? For the record, I definitely feel that there is talent in Asgard. I think at times he's made rash decisions. We know that, obviously, Celtic at Hampden, all the rest of it. And there's probably been times where I wonder if he just hasn't had the push or the emphasis from the players around him to be able to come in and really make a significant impact. He is not alone in that, by the way. There is a reason, Alan, as to why we put most of our hopes and dreams in the second half of last season in an 18-year-old loanee from Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah.
But whether Asgard stays or goes, I think that we will obviously be able to facilitate replacements. I'm not necessarily at the stage where I need to see Tello Asgard leave Rangers any longer, because maybe it is going to be a case of he is able to get that boost from those other players being able to come in. The feeling of leadership, whether you're Lawrence Shankland or whether or not, as I say, you're Dragicevic, and those differences in ages. But ultimately, the group will start to feel that. And if Asgard can take on that responsibility, maybe this season could be the making of him.
Yeah, it could, says Alan, choosing his words very carefully. I mean, I'll leave it to Derek McInnes. I think the one person that's going to be able to, I think, finalise the decision one way or the other will be him. He's going to have to look at Asgard, though. I think he's already made a comment about him. The one thing about Asgard, and I know everybody says, look at him, there's a player in there, he's got such a great touch, he's so majestic, look at his physique and so on. Unfortunately, up to the end of last season, we'll forget about the World Cup and these two friendlies, I honestly feel as if I just don't feel he's got the mentality, and I feel that physically, and he's got the ability and so on. I just feel at times he's so weak, and when it comes to the fight, the people just seem to be brushing him aside and so on. But I hope that Derek McInnes, because he did make a mention, I think a week or a couple of weeks ago about him, I think if Derek McInnes kind of looks at him, see how the other guys have been getting on with him in training, then he may give it a few weeks and see how it goes. And I think the window's the end of August. Instinctively, though, if somebody said to me, by the way, we're going to get, I don't know, 12 million quid or 15 million, some daft money for him, to be perfectly honest with you, Cammy,
he can go.
Aye, as much as it could, because that's great, based on two friendlies, well, whoop-de-doo. and he does that one touch too much, and it is pleasing in the eye. But I've got an evidence. I think I've got maybe about a year of evidence of watching him. Do you get what I mean? And yeah, that'd be great if we can do it. I don't mean I don't dislike the guy's a player, but he didn't show me enough last year, Cammy. Do you know what I mean? It's and especially in some of the big games and things. So does he really want it? I'd love to just look up and say, do you want to? Are you going to try and make your mark here at Ibrox, or are you thinking of going elsewhere? And if I really didn't get 100%, yeah, come on. I feel as if I let everybody down. I would actually take the money, Cammy. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we get a head-turning figure, and by the way,
I hope he proves me wrong if he stays and all that, but you know what I mean, yeah.
It's been an interesting point in terms of, we are apparently looking at real turnover options in terms of Oliver Antman, Ross McCausland, Nadim Bijrami as well. Potentially all of these players could be going out the door pretty soon.
Yeah.
We obviously know that Nico Raskan will be generating a lot of interest. Raskan has to move.
I think he'll be going because all the signing of the midfield. Yeah.
He has to. He has to go now. And if we do get a serious money offer for Asgard, I can live without him. And again, I don't want that to sound disrespectful to him, but you're right, and I think that something that I think that we can see from a Rangers perspective is that we can make an assessment on a player after a due number of games, and when he is given opportunities. And again, I go back to the turn of the year last year at Parkhead, he was awful, and that's a game, after his red card in the Old Firm game at Hampden, that he's then been given the opportunity to try and turn that around, and he was anonymous.
Yeah.
And I know obviously turned out a 3-1 win, and that was fantastic. But I think if you had kept Tello Asgard on the park for the second half,
it just
wouldn't
looks,
have happened.
And you played a lot of football, you still play, fortunately for you. But honestly, it just looks like a kind of guy you would go by. He's poised into the eye, he's got a nice touch, he looks good. Watch this. And unfortunately in Scottish football, there's loads of people that can do that against him, where I think if he was playing in England or in some of the other leagues, where you seem to get a bit more protection. But to me, I'd be targeting, and as I say, Derek McInnes knows more than I'll ever know. It's just based on my view kind of last year. But I think if we get a decent bit of money for him, I would. If there's a decent replacement anyway, Cammy, I would let him go. Yeah.
I think, and I think what's something else which I think we have lacked across the course of the last few managers is being able to make an honest assessment on players.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is looking at players and suggesting, are you up for this? As in, do you understand the battle that you're going to have?
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I think in the build-up to the end of last season and obviously the upcoming transfer window, the most important thing I think that can happen is that whenever we're talking about being able to bring a player over, is someone, whether it's someone from the recruitment team, Derek McInnes, doesn't really matter, but someone is able to make an assessment on a player and say, yes, we can look at the stats and all of the metrics around it.
Could he go to Parkhead and under the pressure, could he stand up and go, give me the ball? And
precisely.
Could he hold his own? And if he can, quite frankly, I think you fail the test, because I know it's the old guy, but you've got people like Stuart McCall and Big Goff and Butcher and Ian Ferguson's and wee Doddy Parley and Derek John. You need to have this mentality, this whole Rangers, and there needs to be a bit of an arrogance, the whole Soonest thing. I'm playing with the Glasgow Rangers. Some of them, it just looks as if they go into their shell and it's like, oh shit, I don't really, I don't think we can afford that.
You're a bit rabbit in the headlights. And
I've seen it, yeah.
And I get it, but the thing for me, and this is probably the benefit, I think, of the window with a number of weeks to run, that Derek McInnes now has a lot of competitive games, important games, that if he is using these games as an opportunity to test some of these players to see as to whether or not they'll stay within here. Now, he can't control deals. If someone comes in Monday next week with a £10 million bid for Tello Asgard, he's out the door.
Oh.
But at the same point, he's now been given a run of games to be able to then put the pressure on these players. And I get that some of them will, and I suppose this is really my kind of point, Asgard has been given those opportunities, and I don't think that he's been given a fairly honest and potentially brutal assessment by the managers that he's played under previously, who have then said, "You're not going to cut it. You're not going to cut it."
Yeah.
And when you see like Derek McInnes, for example, even against West Ham, he's going mental at Gassama for not being able to do his role within that. It gives me comfort to then say, in that instance, if he gets a few games under his belt, under McInnes, in the League Cup, Europe and Asgard still cannot produce it at that stage, then I think Derek McInnes is perfectly within his rights to say it's not going to work and we should take an offer for him by the end of next month. And I don't feel there's anything wrong with that.
No, and it's a leadership thing. You would do it yourself, wouldn't you, with your teams and so on. You get somebody, a one-to-one, we're having a conversation now, open and honest. Are you really up for it? Because what I've seen is X, are you telling me that you've got more or not? Or if, by the way, if you're not really up for it, if you've got any doubts at all, we're fine. Don't try and kid me. As you say, and if the guy says, yeah, I really want to, I can show it, that's great. You've got so many games, but you really need to demonstrate it. And you need to make those decisions. And that's the kind of thing, I'm hoping McInnes will be more, that's the kind of thing Walter would do. He would do the old make him feel nice and so on, but eventually there'll come a time where these guys, him, Advocate and all that, they just make their decision ultimately. And I think we need to, as you say, I think we need to be more like that. Hopefully that will be the case,
Yeah, we will see. So just to wrap up, and as we look forward to tomorrow night, do you have any overwhelming feelings for who plays? So from a right back perspective, I take it that going on the assumption that he's going to be fit for it, you're quite happy with Dujon Sterling filling that role?
Yeah, definitely. I would.
Any preference in your midfield?
Well, I actually think Cammy Devernow's got the wee knock, but I'd really like him to kind of be in there as well. Yeah, I would say Dan Neil as well. I would kind of start with him too. I think it might be too early for the guy that I can't pronounce his name.
I'm going to make you get a tattoo of him. Yeah, Dragojevic. It's going to be too early for him. I think he might come on as a sub, but I don't think he can start.
I've just managed to work out Mikhailchenko, but they may even end up with Chikwani or something like that. Diamande, I think he's been doing that kind of a wee bit wider, hasn't he, because of the legs and so on. So
yeah,
I think he'll probably be involved as well at some point.
And up front, I think we are going to go with Chermiti and Lawrence Shankland.
Definitely.
What I will say is I've liked the look of Nadiri. I thought Nadiri looked bright. I thought he looked pretty positive. And Ryan Nadiri is a great example for me, Alan, of a player who will do a lot of running for you, and he looks keen and he looks hungry.
And he disrupts defenders. He's not predictable, isn't he?
No, he's not. And that's a big thing for us. What we will have to be able to rely upon, in my opinion, is that we need to be able to ensure that from a set piece perspective, we are in a much better space. I will look towards Dan Neil. I thought some of his corners, his outswinging corners were horrendous.
Yeah.
But being able to get Fernandes back in amongst the goals for corners would be a very welcome return.
I think so, yeah. And at some point, I would like to see Finlay Curtis as well playing a part too, because I know it seems a wee bit kind of disappointing, but I definitely think the guy, I think he's shown even where he went as well. I think he could do something for us, Cammy.
Yeah, Curtis is an interesting one. I've kind of been on record with this before, Alan, about when we've got players that we want to be able to try and develop. My heart says I want them to stay at Rangers because I want them to develop with us and I want them to be an asset for the club. But my head says
loan him out again.
If you loan him out, then he's going to get development time. He's going to be able to get that opportunity. You're absolutely right. He did very well at Kilmarnock, solidified himself in there as well. And so he absolutely reaped the benefit of that. I think that it was a really good setup for him to also work under Neil McCann as well, because I do rate McCann as a coach. And I think that he would have given Finlay Curtis a lot of belief, and he gave him game time, and I think he paid him back in return. I would like to be able to see Curtis within that. I think sometimes it can stifle him a little bit playing him out in the flank.
Yes,
but he's going to have to be able to try and play there, and he can provide us options. Whether or not he's able to take the ball to the byline, get some quality crosses in, or whether or not he wants to be able to try and cut inside. He's always going to look for an opportunity.
The thing is, he
to
can
shoot.
finish, Cammy. He's a natural finisher as well. So at times, even when we're doing the old, we'll put Majovsky in there, kind of Nadiri or whatever, but occasionally it could be a case of bring Curtis on for, say, one of the other ones and actually let him play, you know, from wing but moving in, because I've been really impressed with the way the guy can finish, you know, naturally.
Yeah, 100%.
I think
100%.
Ant-Man, I think it looks as if, you know, he's going to be going anyway. So again, it's vital that we definitely get that. We really need width, Cammy, don't we?
Yeah, we do. It's definitely a focus area that, you know, from the recruitment team and what we're looking to be able to. But I mean, I say that now, Alan, but I a week ago I would have said Oliver Atman will definitely be here for the course of this season, and then all of a sudden interest pops up, and we're going to see that, I think, with quite a few players, and it is. Listen, this is definitely the theme of what's going to happen across the course of the next few weeks. This Rangers team that kicks off, you know, the beginning of this month
will be different by the end of August.
Will be different by the end of the month.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. I don't have any issues with that whatsoever. The most important thing, I think, when we get to Tannadice and Friday night, Alan, is being able to try and just make sure that we have definitely looked at some of those gaps that we've had from last season. I think the personnel change and the players who have left, I think we have got a better distributor from goal, because I think Pandur's kicking is far better than Jack Butland's, which allows us more opportunities. I think we've seen where we'll probably play slightly more through the middle. So whether or not it's Devlin, Dan Neil, whomever, if it's going to be Diomande coming in a little bit as well, I'm perfectly fine with that. And, you know, I would be saying to guys like Yusuf Chermiti, you know, go and express yourself. You've been able to do it before. Yes, I appreciate you've had the summer break, but now you're back to basics, and just go and go out there with a little bit of aggression, a little bit of strength, a little bit of positivity, but belief is the key word I would use.
And I think with Dan Neil as well, you get people coming up from middle to then, you know, kind of help, you know, up the front as well. I think last year there was always gaps, wasn't there? It was like could we actually get more in? So I think it's important now in this midfield, if we are beginning to win things and drive, that again, we can come up in numbers too, Cammy. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that will do us for extra this week. David will be back with you on Flagship on Monday to unpack everything from Tannadice and how Rangers kickstart what I am going to call right now, Alan, a league-winning season. That's how positive I feel about it. I'm very encouraged by the things that I've seen so far, and the business that Rangers are doing. I think we have done well to make the necessary changes. And I definitely feel more comfortable that a Derek McInnes style will be able to get us across the line. So I'm stating it now for the record. You can follow every game, every update, every single piece of Rangers news if you want to join us on our Patreon community, which is www.patreon.com/Heart and Hand. You will get shows about Rangers and loads of other topics, football and everything else as well, every single day. So you will have loads and loads of content on there. Thank you to the RYDC for continuing to be our season sponsors. The Rangers Youth Development Company do amazing work, being able to bring forward the next generations of talent. And thank you to their support for the course of this season. I'll be back with you next Friday, because obviously we are in European action next Thursday. So I will be back with you next Friday for extra. And the last thing for me to do, aside from thanking all of you for listening, is to thank my very good friend Alan Bradley for coming on and joining me for our season kickoff.
No, as ever, I appreciate it, Cammy. It was great to be on, and Dragojevic and myself, I'm sure we'll get closer as the months progress. Yeah.
You will. When he becomes our player of the season, you will definitely
just like Vanya, won't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers, our executive producers. David will be back with you on Monday. And if you, as I say, if you want to be able to get more content from Heart and Hand, please jump onto our Patreon site. We'll speak to you again next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.